I am the practice lead for talent as a service practice here, and I've been in Singapore for 17 years, and large part of it in talent consulting. And Olofsson and Company, we are a specialist search and consulting firm where we work exclusively in the technology and startup ecosystem globally. Really, we work with some of the incoming tech companies into Asia, and we help them set up their teams here, but also help them with other processes like consulting HR best practices. On the startup consulting side is where we help founders set up best practices for talent and help them scale up efficiently. Today I have with me Thyag here for our special series of podcast. We're calling it From a Founder's Heart.
Oh, great.
And what it is really about is that we believe that a startup is a founder's dream. And it's an idea that's turned into reality, and we believe in enabling founders to achieve this dream and help them become successful. Not just with getting an A team and putting a team together, but also we want to help founders kick off the idea and help the team stay with them and grow with the idea to become a successful scale-up and eventually help them exit as well. We believe talent does not have to fall off your rocket ship if you create best practices and environment for them to upskill and upgrade as you grow. Thyag, please to share about where you are coming from and about your background as well with our audience.
Sure, happy to do that. Thank you for having us on this podcast. My name is Thyag Venkatesan. I am a co-founder and CEO at Virkware. Virkware is a HR technology startup headquartered out of Singapore, and we are trying to change the future of work. Just personally about myself, I started my career in the dot-com era, and that means I have worked in more organizations than I would have liked to with all the layoffs of that time. But on the flip side, it's given me the opportunity to work across multiple industries, different sized organizations as well as geographies. And through all that, I came to the realization that I feel strongly about being good at managing teams and people. And that's what gave rise to Virkware. In my co-founder, I found someone who has a similar view as myself, and we've now embarked on this journey to change the future of work.
Amazing, congratulations. And that's what we're here to talk about, your journey and the founder's journey. There's a famous saying by Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, that if I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that, but I knew the one thing that I might regret is not trying. So over to you, Thyag. Share with us about your journey, about what inspired you to create Virkware.
Something that we realized in most organizations is that there is a wealth of opportunities within organizations. And you'd be surprised, we're not just talking about large organizations, but the moment you have a few hundred people onwards, you're part of a network and there's a wealth of opportunity.
True.
What we realized was that in many organizations, we were missing the ability of connecting employees with these opportunities that existed inside so that they could address their aspirations. And our belief is that if we help employees to address their aspirations, they'd be happier, more productive, and organizations would benefit as a result. And that's really what we set out to do with Virkware. Connect people with opportunities within so that they can grow and they don't have to necessarily look externally for growth.
Yeah, and I'm testimony. My career has dwelled on people not finding those opportunities internally and looking out, and we have of course helped them place, but then I know from interviewing thousands of candidates, if they were to find the right opportunity within their organizations, their career would have lasted much longer within the same company. So truly inspiring technology that you have created to help that cause for talent and for large enterprises or even mid-sized organizations. What are the specific challenges in the HR landscape that you aim to address with your product?
Sure. Again, going back to organizations, if you think about it, organizations do not systematically understand the aspirations of their employees.
Yeah.
And the bigger the organization, the more challenging this becomes. So a lot of instances, employees keep their aspirations close to their heart. So organizations don't necessarily have a good understanding of this.
Yeah.
Conversely, the opportunities, and what we call as the opportunities landscape within the organization, there isn't a lot of visibility for the average employee. Now, in one of the financial institutions where I worked for close to 12 years, my co-founder worked in a global technology company for more than 20 years. And despite having spent that time in those organizations and not necessarily being too junior in our careers, we both knew less than 5% of the people in the organizations that we belonged.
Wow,
right?
not surprised though.
And so you are part of a powerful network, but a lot of it is not visible to you.
True.
So our goal is really, how can we understand the aspirations of employees better, and then how can we understand the opportunities landscape, and then empower employees to navigate these opportunities. I think another problem we've seen historically is the over-reliance on both line managers and human resources to orchestrate the matching of opportunities and aspirations. And we said, how can we make it more self-directed? How can we empower employees to help themselves? And that's really what we're trying to solve.
That is so true. Like in most of the organizations that I have been part of, the managers are stretched too much to just do their day job, and the HR teams are quite lean. So for them, with that added responsibility of enabling people and figuring out navigating their career paths, while it's such a noble concept and many companies are able to do it successfully, but most of the organizations fail to do it, and that's why we see people wanting to leave large organizations. So very exciting, this concept, and we'll delve more into the concept itself and what it's called. But before we get there, I really want to also, for the benefit of our listeners who are founders or who are on the edge of becoming a founder or dwelling on an idea and haven't really taken that step, I would love to sort of hear about your journey as a founder as well. I'm beginning to sing, so I'm going to say another one from Steve Jobs, who's one of my favorite personalities from the world of technology. He said, "I'm convinced that about half of what separates the successful entrepreneurs from non-successful ones is pure perseverance." And I'm sure you as a founder have experienced that as well. But how has it been for you? How has been your journey as a founder so far?
It's been a journey of paradoxes so far. What I mean by that is it's equally liberating and challenging at the same time. It's full of optimism and frustration at the same time. And it's also contradictions. You mentioned perseverance. It's also a paradox because when do you know you're not persevering enough, or you're just being blind and you're just continuing blindly? So it's really a journey of paradoxes. Having said that, it's been the best learning experience of my career. I'm starting an organization and running it has been a lifelong dream. I'm finally living it.
Wow.
And I'm hoping that Virkware continues to grow. We continue to add value and thrive for years to come. The jury is out there, but I'm working on it.
That's amazing. What you said also reminded me what Jack Ma said, which is that most people give up today when actually the page is about to turn tomorrow.
Really, I didn't hear that one before, but it's also, I told you it's a challenging journey, but we do fall back on some of these sayings. You'll be quite surprised, and sometimes that's all you have got to go. So thanks for that. It's a good one. I like it.
My pleasure. And these are the things which also have kept me going in my own journey of working in the startup world, and both as a consultant, but also as one of the HR leads with some of these startups as well. And then I feel that there is Singapore as a hub of startups in Asia has matured quite a lot over the years, and I've been in this space for 8 years now, solely consulting in the startup space. how have you found the ecosystem of help around you as a founder? Are there places, bodies that you've been able to tap into, either in Singapore or globally? And please do share with our listeners what has that been?
It's a very good question. It's something I feel strongly about. To a large extent, the strength of an ecosystem depends on what the startup is looking for.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of startups look to raise funds throughout their journey, and I think the ecosystem in Singapore is excellent right now for startups to raise funding, and especially if you compare it to 10 to 15 years ago. I'm sure you know the same, we both have experienced that. I think that has changed significantly. For us though, I think our priority and our focus right from the beginning, because we are a B2B enterprise software company, has been to secure early pilots and customers. And on that front, I must say it's been a bit challenging on two fronts. Number one, the size of the domestic market in Singapore for enterprises is small. So if you compare to startups in the US who have a huge home market advantage, we don't have that. And neither did we find anything in the ecosystem that effectively supports us on that, right? So I'm certain it will improve, but that's something that's been our experience. There are a few resources that are available today that we found to be valuable. Enterprise Singapore has a couple of them. The Global Innovation Alliance program allows startups to explore overseas markets. So that's an excellent resource. They have something called Enterprise Development Grant, and here they subsidize startups to help build capabilities. So we leverage from that to become ISO 27001 certified. So these two are very good resources. Action Community for Entrepreneurs Singapore, ACE Singapore, is another good resource for startups to meet with fellow founders and build a kind of a network. So I would say in Singapore, these are very good resources. Globally, especially for enterprise SaaS, Y Combinator and SaaSter are very good resources. And I would be remiss not to mention ChatGPT. It's relatively new, but it's amazing how useful it's proving to be, especially for startups with limited resources. So we recently established a reseller agreement with a partner, and as we were working on it, and some of these documents come with terms that are quite legal in nature, etc. And so you can reach out to ChatGPT and ask it to explain what it means practically. And for people like us who've never done a reseller agreement before, you can learn about it and what the terms are quite quickly. So I think ChatGPT is a great resource that's coming.
Definitely, I think that ChatGPT has come to a lot of small business founders and even for us as a great resource to tap into, and startups. I know from my first-hand experience with lean teams, even in the HR space, there is so much that we can get done with the AI, and it's unbelievable how it is transforming our lives. More on personal front, how do you get yourself going on a day-to-day basis? Of course, it's a very, very hard journey for founders to keep that engine of belief going on. What do you do for self-inspiration?
To me, coffee conversations with friends and fellow founders are probably critical from an inspiration point of view. It's amazing. I've met a number of founders, many of them who've been successful, but and a lot of them are generous with their time, with founders like us who are trying to make it.
That is amazing.
That's amazing, and it's really inspiring to hear from their story and the challenges they've been through and how they've solved it. So those are really helpful. Friends, family will always be an important source of support that I rely on. Apart from that, music, playing tennis, sports, exercising regularly is quite a helpful thing. And lastly, of course, it's always a serious world. So I do like to look at LinkedIn and YouTube, and sometimes you find memes and something light-hearted, which you can actually connect with. And those things are also useful. And of course, like the quotations that you shared earlier, those are also sources of inspiration.
Yeah, so true. And especially if you are an experienced founder, as Thyag said, being generous with your time and, sharing your stories with founders who are coming into this space. That's an amazing source for someone like yourself or who are even sitting on the edge. So please, continue to do that for fellow founders, and it's amazing to hear that you have such connections as well. How about having those personal sort of, connects with or having some, investment into either self-learning or having mentors? Is that a path that you've taken? Because more and more recently we are hearing that founders are so driven and getting day-to-day, activities and raising funds, and a lot of times they don't get time to invest in their own learning journeys. Some are able to do it, some get coaches. Are some avenues that you have taken on to yet?
Yes, absolutely. And to me, having access to such mentors and coaches is a hygiene factor.
Okay, that's amazing.
By itself it doesn't guarantee success, but I see it being extremely difficult being successful without access to that.
Yeah.
So just to give you a few examples, I personally have mentors and coaches, and these are people either through professional networks or personal networks who we've met, and over time they've taken an interest either in me personally or in Virkware's journey, and they've been kind enough to spend time and give advice. So for example, I have a close friend of mine who's a VC, and so anytime I have something relating to either how other founders struggle or raising funds, I can reach out to him. He provides me with guidance. There's another person who's very good in technology, been head of technology in a firm, and I can reach out to him with any technology related challenges, especially as we are growing. And lastly, the two co-founders of Virkware, I would say when we started, we were not great at sales. We did not have sales experience. So that has been a huge learning curve, and we have a mentor there who's done enterprise sales and who's really guided us and continues to guide us through these, right? So it's been, to me, it's a hygiene factor, and I'm glad to have them on my side.
That's amazing, and that is so critical. Most of the founders who end up being successful, it is because they are not afraid, not shy, or don't sort of believe that taking help from your network of founders and having a formal ecosystem of mentors, is something that they would be looked upon as needing help or needy at all, right? So it does take a bit of that stretching yourself to ask for this mentorship, and I personally have benefited so much from professional mentorship or even being a mentor as well from my own learning. So great to hear that that's been part of your process as a founder as well. Now coming back to the main topic of discussion today, which is of course Virkware, but the core line, underlying concept of talent marketplace, that is Virkware promoting that sort of concept. For our listeners who probably are not from the HR world, share with us what is talent marketplace really, and how does it fit in the world that you are in?
Sure. So we call ourselves an internal talent marketplace, and what we are doing is enabling a private network within companies that constitutes all the employees of the company. Right? And I use the term employees a little loosely. It can also include contractors, consultants, etc. But all the employees of the company are on a private network that's active and vibrant. And the goal here is, to enable people to cut across functional, departmental, geographical silos to come together and then collaborate with one another. And just like if you look at social media networks, right, and you take the example of LinkedIn, where you have close to 1 billion strangers on a common network. Someone wants to hire people, someone's looking for a job, they come together. Someone's looking for a service, someone's trying to do business development, they come together. So really it's about building a similar private network within the organization so that employees can kind of help themselves, right? And at the same time, going back to what we discussed earlier, that the network understands aspirations, the network understands opportunities, and personalizes them and helps them to connect.
Great. So it is like an internal social media or like a LinkedIn, which is within the company,
Correct.
where I take ownership of what I want to go, where I want to go to work or apply. But how is it different from internal job moves or postings? What's the sort of core underlying difference there?
That's a good question. And if I were to think about it, I would say there are three broad areas, you know, in how an internal talent marketplace differs from existing job boards. So the first is really about personalization.
Yeah.
Right. So here, because we try to understand the aspirations of every employee, the network or the talent marketplace is able to personalize the recommendations. It understands opportunities, personalizes those for every employee, number one. The second thing that it does is it takes a pull-based approach as opposed to a push-based approach. What I mean by that is traditionally in organizations, what you would do is you would send an email out with all open internal mobility opportunities to every employee at the same time.
That's right.
It's in your inbox. If I as an employee am busy right now, I won't look at it. But when I want to look at it earlier, it's amongst a multitude of emails and I may not really go back to look at it. So in a talent marketplace, it's about your time. You as an employee, when you want to go look for it, you can pull the relevant information. And the third thing is really autonomous. The goal is you do not have to rely on, as an employee, on your manager or HR, but really you can navigate that network and help yourself. So whether that's internal mobility or whether that's mentoring, you can go and find those opportunities. And perhaps the last bit is, depending on how the internal talent marketplace is being implemented, it can actually gather a lot of insights because what we try to do is really connect into the natural flow of work of employees. So if you think about it, it's a little bit like an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch, any smartwatch. We used to exercise before, but we didn't have something that was constantly kind of getting data. But now that we use smartwatches, it gathers insights and is able to then help us track how we are doing as an individual, and also it's able to give us recommendations. And so with the talent marketplace, there's also that element. So employees can choose to use it in the natural flow of work. So it gains some insights and then helps them and provides them with it.
So it's like an active buddy or an active engine that you can interact with. And service your aspirations to do the next thing in your job within the same company. And not having to look outside of your organization, which is brilliant, right? Like if you're in a large organization, you can learn so much from within, right? So that's amazing. How does it, however, help the organizations identify and address skill gaps within their workforce? I think there is an angle of skill gaps as well that where companies can take advantage of it.
Absolutely, and the skills framework is an important component for internal talent marketplaces in general, and even for Workware, the skills framework is something that's a foundational element. So there are two aspects when we talk about skills gap, and internal talent marketplaces help with that. So the first thing is, what's the baseline? So the baseline, by that we mean, if you have 1,000 employees or 50,000 employees, do you understand the skills that these employees have at present? And as they continue to work, perhaps they do a new project, etc., they're constantly picking up new skills, or they are refining their existing skills. How can you stay on top of that? So that's the first bit, which is having a real-time view of your current skills. But the more important thing is also then to understand what are the skills requirements. And here there are two ways in which to look at it. One is the bottom-up approach. So if you look at all the jobs that are being posted within the organization, if you look at all the projects or stretch assignments within the organization, etc., and what's happening in your industry, right? Are you able to identify what are the skill requirements? And then there's also a top-down element to it, right? What is your strategy as a firm? Is that going to change? There was this interesting thing about a hardware storage company globally that wanted to move away from being completely hardware focused to more software and cloud focused, and that meant a number of their employees needed to be reskilled. Right? So understanding top down what those requirements are, and I think an internal talent marketplace helps with a lot of these. Essentially.
So basically doing your workforce planning based on skills and future development that's required
Yeah.
can be achieved via the software, the Virkware software. That's amazing. And how does it really help the organizations to become more agile and responsive to the business needs? Like, how do you sort of adjust based on where your business direction is going?
Yeah. So there are a few ways in which this can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So in many organizations, having the right resources, working on the right topics is a challenge.
True.
Now it can be a professional services organization, technology, any industry, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So one way in which an internal talent marketplace can help is really by understanding what are the needs, allowing managers who have resource requirements to post those requirements, right? And it's not easy to go into the market and hire a skill, it takes time. But you may have a lot of capacity and know-how available within your organization. So being able to post the requirements and then having those requirements seen by people with those know-how and skills and capacity within your organization wherever they are, and then allowing all of them to come together and execute on these ideas is one way in which you can become more agile to requirement. Otherwise, what happens is you may have people who can see, you can have certain managers or employees who can see developments in the marketplace. And they think they should execute something that will help their organization. But because they can't find the resources, the idea never gets executed.
True.
And the firm's not moving as fast as it can. But here they can post it, connect with people around the organization, execute the idea, and keep moving forward. And similarly, if you take that idea to the top of the house, managers and HR can see where are the most requirements, where they have the skills, and do we want to then start to move the skills around, or do we want to create a common pool of talent to be more responsive so that people are working on the ideas that matter most and not on the ideas that are more important just for their department.
That is so true. I work with an organization where when ChatGPT and the AI, the Gen AI was just coming in, we actually at an organization level did a workshop where we opened it to everybody in the company, and this is like about across 7 countries, where if you are using AI in your job function, anything that you do, either you're finance, marketing, HR, present your idea. So we brought everybody together and everybody shared how they're using AI, different tools that were freely available. And that kind of, in a way, is similar, right? If I'm interested in AI and I want to raise my hand for a project that might be kicked off in my company, I want the right people to know that this is my interest.
Exactly. That's exactly the kind of use case you're spot on.
Yeah, that's amazing. Of course, we did it very randomly without a software, and we are a smaller company, but in a large organization, I imagine it can be so powerful. Okay, so how does Virkware really facilitate the creation of these career opportunities for employees in terms of how is the software activating it?
Sure. So we're a cloud-based platform, and what we do is we create an instance for a particular company, and we create accounts for all the employees of that company. And they get started interacting with one another in the form of like a social media. So the starting point is the employee profile. So you create a profile for yourself. We help to populate some aspects of the profile with your skills, data, etc. And using that to start to interact with others. And over time, as we understand your aspirations, we start showing relevant opportunities. An example of an opportunity would be an internal gig. So let's assume you're an organization with 5,000 employees, and at the moment there are 300 gigs that have been posted. Now, naturally, you may not want to go through all of them. So what we do is we have a Virkware engine that understands your aspiration to figure out which are the top 10 that are going to be most relevant to you, and then to show you those opportunities, and then you can go and look at the team there, interact with them, work on it, and maybe experiment with some new skills, new roles, or a new function, etc.
That's amazing. So what that really means is the critical part is the data that I, as an employee, populate my profile with and make it nice and shiny, not just with a nice DP, but also with all the skills that I have, for example, if I'm a project manager and I have PMP certification and I've done projects in HRMS implementation, I put all of those in my skills, but also I add myself the skills that I want to learn. For example, I want to get into an AI project. And when you say gig, you mean that it doesn't have to be a complete job move, but also just getting exposure to projects, which may not be in my core of the work that I'm doing now, but the work that I want to learn. So that's the concept that kind of pulls the right information for me once I populate my profile very well. And that's amazing. That's just such a revelation for people who must be in big companies with so much going around, and they will stop feeling that they're missing out on all the learning opportunities. And how does that really integrate with other HR systems? Like, does your system interact with the other learning, the HRMS? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, that's a good point. And now, when we talk about opportunities landscape, right? Some of those opportunities already exist in other systems. The information about that. So what I mean by that is, if you talk about internal mobility opportunities, open job roles, that information is likely to exist in your HRMS system, like SuccessFactors or Workday, etc. If you talk about training courses, that's likely to be in a learning management system that your firm has, or could be LinkedIn Learning, etc. What we do is to connect with these systems to get this information on these opportunities. And then some of the opportunities, like internal gigs, are actually in our platform. Right?
Okay.
So we then have an understanding of all the opportunities, some by connecting with existing systems, some from our own platform, and then we are able to show you those opportunities as an employee to so you can progress. So an example might be, and tying it back to the point that you made about your profile and sharing your skills. Our goal is, if you're looking to move from one office to another within the company, let's say you're in Singapore, you want to go to London, right? Once we understand that, we want to make sure that we can help you build your network with the London office.
Oh,
right? And so that means, like you rightly said, it's not only about saying, hey, here's a job, because it's unlikely that if you apply for it, it's going to be easy for the hiring manager to hire you. But what we do instead is say that, hey, here's a gig. You can experiment with it. It's just spending a few hours a week. You get to know some people from the London office, they get to know you, etc. We say, here are some mentors, here are some open job roles relating to the London office where your existing skill sets could be a good fit, etc. So we take information from the ecosystem of systems within the company, and we then help you to navigate them.
And this is so powerful that you don't have to go outside of your organization to build these networks.
Right.
Because of course today, if I'm looking to move to Singapore, I start connecting with people on LinkedIn, I make my list of companies that I want to target. But if I can do that within my own organization and start networking with the people that I want to work with, and even better, not just networking, I get an opportunity to work with them on a project. And they get to know me and I get to know them, and it becomes like, and if eventually that move happens, it is proven already, right? There is very risk involved in hiring somebody once you have worked with them on a big project as well, right? So that's really powerful as well, and it is so exciting that a software can make the whole process very smooth as well. But how does really, are there aspects of the platform that also helps organization with succession planning and leadership development? How does that fit in?
Yeah, absolutely. It does help with those as well. So if you take succession planning as an example, going back to the concept that everything is not about relying on HR to orchestrate these elements.
Yes.
In Workware, we allow managers to have the ability to search for employee profiles, their colleagues, and we also make recommendations. The engine, with its understanding of skills that you have, and consequently the skills associated with your role, and hence what your successor should have, we are able to recommend colleagues from other parts of the organization who could be your successor. So you could take that into account. We also start to form an understanding of employees, because we have 360 feedback built in. We also would understand how you rate different people you work with, to also understand who we think could be a good successor for you. So we are able to help you with recommendations so that you can select a successor. And at the same time, the engine is also able to provide recommendations to HR on a kind of a score for successors. So, managers could choose to identify 3 or 4 people as their successors.
Yeah.
And what we do is then try to help HR understand how the 3 or 4 people would rate as your successor. So we have a built-in model that we do. So that in the event that you do decide to leave the company and HR needs to make a decision on who could be a likely successor, they have some data points that they can fall back. So that's on succession planning. On leadership, we especially help with developing hands-on skill.
Okay.
So there is a company we are helping with, and what they have done is to identify leaders at 3 levels: the junior level, the mid-level, senior level, and they send all of them to dedicated classroom training.
Okay.
Right? So many of them go in and develop certain skills. So now if you take the senior level people, so they've probably gone into a classroom training on mergers and acquisitions, right? But not everyone necessarily has had the hands-on experience to do that. So what we then do on Virkware is identify for each of their leaders what are the skills that they've developed in the classroom and how to help them get hands-on training on those classrooms by creating gigs and then adding mentors. So let's say the same example, if someone needs to get hands-on exposure on mergers and acquisition, but the person happens to be more from an operations kind of a background, we would connect or assign that leader into a gig where we have a strategy team working on an active acquisition to work with them and to coach them. And at the end of it, you get feedback on the skills by the actual practitioners. So you kind of know what you need to do. And it's an ongoing journey to develop those skills. And another interest, and we do this across the hierarchy of the organization. And another way we could do it is we have built-in recognition systems so that helps organizations to understand who are emerging leaders based on recognition by their peers.
Okay.
Right? And so if HR or managers have not nominated someone, but the peers are consistently rating them as being high on leadership qualities, HR can also look into them and then include them in the leadership cohort.
That's amazing. So the 360-degree feedback that enables these ratings by your peers, kind of you have some new hero employees coming up, which may not be in the purview of management or immediate supervisors, because there could be some biases as well that play into if there is no other avenues to recognize potential talent. So in a way, Virkware is helping organizations answer the immediate supervisor biases as well.
Or barriers.
Right.
You are a supervisor, you're managing 20 people remotely, someone is sitting in Japan, there are 3 people team, and you don't really know what's going on, but that person could be a superstar from a leadership perspective, and getting that peer feedback helps in addition to what you may hear from others on the ground.
Yeah, that's amazing. And in terms of, there is a concept of learning organization, right? And it is basically an organization that prioritizes personal and professional growth through knowledge transfer. How does Virkware enable a learning organization? And learning has become that one of the top 3 reasons why an employee will stay. It's one of the most important tools to retain employees in today's talent landscape. So how does Virkware enable learning organization?
And that's a very important point. So there are 3 ways in which we support this. So the first is, if you have a learning management platform, and oftentimes it's a separate platform, you need to go look for it, and then you need to then see what are the courses in there that are relevant to you, attend those courses, etc. And as we've discussed before, what we try to do is to bring those learning courses from your learning management platform into Virkware and in a personalized manner. So when you're looking for it, you get a recommendation that these 3 or 4 courses could be relevant for you. So that's one, helping with the discovery. But attending classroom training by itself does not develop skills. It creates awareness, but unless you apply it, you can't develop those skills, and that's your investment in your learning doesn't go far. And in Virkware, leveraging the gig platforms, stretch assignments, etc., we enable employees to then apply that classroom learning into a new area
Yeah.
and then develop skills. So let's say you have an interest in machine learning.
Yeah.
You have no opportunity for that in your immediate team. You do an external course in machine learning, you get back. But if you can see gigs in your organization with a team that's far away, maybe in Seoul, they're working on some machine learning project, and you put your hand up, work on it, you actually develop your hands-on skill.
Yeah.
So that's the second way in which we help organizations to become more of a learning organization. The last element is learning from peers or social learning, right? Going back to what I said, we built it as a social network. So there are interest groups, there are community posts, etc. So that you can see, let's say you have an interest in generative AI, going back to the example you said, you can see that there's a generative AI group and you can get together with them and learn from that. So these ideas are not new. We've had SharePoint groups, etc. We've just made it a little bit more dynamic, more social-like, so it becomes easier for people to discover and participate. So these are the three ways in which we contribute.
Got it. And I understand now that when you say the gig work, right, of course, it's outside of my current job scope. So I imagine there needs to be mechanisms where there needs to be some kind of approvals to be able to participate in gig work outside of your scope of work, where managers on both ends need to come into play, and your system will enable that process as well, like getting approval to work on a gig project outside of your scope.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because 70% just roughly of customers we speak with raise this as an important concern, right? So we built those controls inside and providing organizations with the flexibility. There could be organizations that tell us that they do not want to put any constraint. So if a person wanted to work on stretch assignment for 100% of the time, let them do that. If it's a new age, high-tech, completely agile firm, there could be organizations that tell us, an employee on average can spend 3 to 4 hours a week on gigs, and especially now that a lot of people are working remotely, you can spare 3 to 4 hours a week easily. And if they do that, then we apply that control, so that as long as you're within that limit, you can participate. And if you exceed that, you still can, but then your line manager will need to approve. And sometimes things are a little bit slow, or you had a conversation with your line manager and can do that. So yes, you're absolutely right. These controls are super critical, and we built that into the workflow with flexibility.
That's amazing, and it's all transparent that there is an avenue for us to learn as employees, but your manager is aware of it, and there is no sort of tension between the two groups and it's in the benefit of the whole organization that it exists, because it helps you retain talent. Talent that is hungry to grow, talent that is upgrading themselves as the organization is evolving.
One point on that though, Niharika, at the end of the day, there is a kind of a tension between what the organization wants or needs versus what the manager of a team wants or needs, and sometimes they're not necessarily always aligned. So a resource in a particular manager's team, by working in a stretch assignment, would benefit from the organization, not necessarily the manager. And while we have implemented these controls, we do support with change management. Ultimately, we need the support of senior management, because they would need to set the direction and get the buy-in of all the line managers within the organization.
True. As with any initiative in an organization, as with any new vision for the company, it is imperative that the senior leadership needs to drive it. Senior leadership needs to be the change champions themselves. So there is no doubt, like in any kind of and this is quite a significant change. Implementing talent marketplace as a concept is really changes the way the make of the organization. It requires a lot of investment to make sure the data is in there. I've tried to do that once, and it wasn't easy to even make sure my employee profiles and data were half ready as well. So it does take leadership buy-in, not just buy-in, their strong conviction to make them realize and make them drive this as a concept as well, right? Coming to the product itself, right, just the software, what are the key technological features of Virkware that differentiates your software from other HR solutions? I'm sure there are lots of, probably this is not a very, very mature market concept as a talent marketplace software, but there are products I know in this space. How does how does Workware stand apart?
Yeah. Like you rightly said, at the moment this is not a mature product category. So each solution provider like Workware or our competitors have our own approach to an internal talent marketplace and the capabilities that it provides. In terms of the differentiation between a Workware and your traditional HR systems, is that traditional HR systems rightfully are built keeping the HR team in mind. The main purpose is to help the HR team to carry out their responsibilities. Right? So if you think about your HRMS systems, it's about helping the HR team to manage the life cycle of an employee. Right? So I think a big difference between something like a Workware and these HR systems is that we build it for the regular employee and not for the HR team. So we built it with the employee as the heart of the system so that they can navigate it themselves with minimal guidance or instruction from HR. But at the same time, we provide HR the ability to set the rules of the talent landscape, or they manage the platform and they receive the insights from it. So that's one key difference with other systems. The second difference between us and perhaps some of the competitors is that we've invested a lot to build a baseline level of engagement, right? Because if you think about some of the empowerment we talk about around your careers, you're not necessarily looking to do that on a daily basis.
True.
Right? It's maybe something you look at once a year, once in 2 years, once in 3 years, etc. But we built this engagement layer so that you go in and you stay connected with your employees on a regular basis, and so that the network is vibrant. And when you need something, network that will respond to you. Right? So that's perhaps one difference. Whereas some vendor solutions would be based on just a career-focused conversation when you're looking for it. So maybe when you're having a career-focused discussion, then you use the solution. So, and it's not to say one approach is better than the others. Again, the jury is out on that. But that's the approach we've taken.
But you'll be surprised to know how often people want to think about doing something else. It all depends on the supervisor. Supervisor relationships is another very, very important, one of the top 3 besides learning, the reasons why people leave or why people stay. So if you sometimes when you're not in the right supervisor relationship, you want to look at a Workware more often than you think.
Fair point. I take
But the good thing is that you have it as an internal mobility tool or avenues to move internally rather than thinking of leaving the organization, which is so important as well. And I'm sure when it comes to implementing a concept like this, like we were talking about change management earlier, but there must be challenges that you're already facing in terms of implementation and adoption. How have you so far overcome those challenges? What are you doing? Of course, this is for our listeners who might be thinking of a product like this or thinking of a solution like this, but they already know that, this can never happen. I can never get this done in my company. Never mind, move on.
I think it starts with, and these are very real challenges, and we will almost face it. We'll face it in almost all engagements that we work on. The starting point for us is to get buy-in from the senior team. So this is not something where the CHRO and the CHRO organization can select Workware and then inform the rest of the organization, because this is something that all employees are going to use and going to use actively, so it's going to impact them. So we start with getting buy-in from all the senior management team, and that might mean the buying journey takes a little bit longer, but we need to do that. So we do that, and once we do that, we then embark on a kind of a change management journey. We need to have a strong change management toolkit that we built up over time, and we do a few things that we've learned and that works for us. So just to give you a couple of examples of these. The first is we typically will pick a diverse pilot. So there's no point in doing something like an internal talent marketplace with one single department. Right? So we are thoughtful about how we identify users from multiple departments onto a pilot, and that there is sufficient scale in that pilot. We do that. We select super users, we identify super users. They are critical for us. So we work with them to generate what we call a seed activity.
Yes.
So that when users come onto Workware for the very first time for the company, they do not encounter an empty page.
Yes.
Right? So we create some gigs, real gigs that managers actually need support on.
Yeah.
We create interest groups that people have an interest in and are a part of, etc. So we work with super users to create it, and then we support the journey.
Yeah.
So Workware is very much part of it. We set up a project team. We work with the customer team, and we support the journey through newsletters. We have campaigns. We work with specialists.
Yes.
We look at Olofsson and company as a specialist, as an example.
Yes.
So we would reach out to companies like yourself and partner with these engagements and have a kind of a structured change management program. And depending on the size of the company, could go anywhere from 3 to 6 months until adoption hits the right level, and then it was self-sustaining.
This is amazing to hear. I have had my a personal experience as well, where I was part of an organization who were actually implementing or changing, migrating from one system to another. I was part of the change champions. In fact, I was the team lead of the change champions. And I was one of those super users who was identified to to spread positivity about the new system with people who sat around me, and show them how to use it, or just kind of talk about and feed some activities as well. And that was such a successful migration that we did in our organization. And yes, like with our talent as a service practice, we work with a lot of organizations to implement talent marketplace, and that's where we are partnering with Workware to bring in the technology as we help the organizations do skills gap analysis and what do the skill landscape looks like, but then the technology is there to support, and we're able to help you as well implement and do the change management for you as well by running workshops within the organization as well, and that's super exciting. Coming to the impacts and benefits, right? Of course, I'm sure you get asked this a lot as well. What is how does Workware improve employee engagement and retention within the organization? How do you answer when your sort of potential or your existing customers ask you, probably even after they started using it?
So we of course have certain metrics that we help them to track, and metrics could be direct metrics or derived metrics. Right? So the direct metrics are those that are relating to activity on the platform, because that's the baseline. If there's no activity on the platform, we can forget about retention, etc. So the direct activity would be things like how many mentor engagements are there on the platform, how many stretch assignments have been completed, how many people have improved their skills, right, in a specific duration. So we track these measures actively and make them available to the customer team through real-time reports. And then there are the indirect measures, or what we call as derived measures, and these would be things such as retention metrics, how is that improved. And here what we do is we have a baseline for some of these at the start, and then over time we would then measure how these organizational metrics are doing and are we moving the needle. But these are slightly more long term. And as with anything, they're always challenging to, there's a causality challenge. We can't say everything is caused or not caused by the talent marketplace.
There could be so many things that can happen in parallel that impact these criteria.
Absolutely. But we set these up in conversation with the customers, and then we track them.
Are there any measurable outcomes or ROIs that the companies are expecting you as a platform to achieve?
So there are some of these, and we typically will agree on them at the start. So some of them would be new metrics. So certain organizations may tell us, for example, they want to see X number of mentoring engagements in a particular year. They want to see a certain number of stretch assignments being completed, over the course of a year. So some are new metrics that, based on what the platform can enable, customers want us to track. But some would be existing metrics, such as attrition rate. Right. So let's say an organization has got a 19% attrition rate at the moment. So they may say we want to see a 1 to 2% improvement in the attrition rate by end of the year. Then we know that there is some meaningful conversation. Or they want to see a slight reduction in the number of hires. So for example, can we use Workware to reduce some of the contract hires? if some people didn't need a full-time resource, they needed part-time support,
Yeah.
can we replace that by having capacity freed up from within? So those are
Yeah.
some examples of metrics
Yeah,
we will
very,
establish.
very interesting, of course. And I think the point of having reduced external hires is quite interesting as well, and reduced contract hires as well. Of course, retention is one of the key criteria for any organization, the turnover rate as well. But a lot of times you would have to, I think that's where you would struggle to define whether it
It's
is
a direct impact.
It is a direct impact,
Right.
because there could be factors like the hiring manager, or a news in the industry led sort of downturn as well. But that's where we'll probably have to be cautious, I imagine,
Indeed.
more than the other more directly impacted outcomes.
You're absolutely right. And it helps, one way to measure that is also pulse. Because like we say, if the way we arrive at retention is to say, if you help employees find opportunities internally, chances are they'll stay, they'll not leave.
Yeah.
And even if they do not find those opportunities, by the very fact that we are empowering them
Yes.
to embrace those aspirations,
Yeah.
just makes them feel a little bit more
Yeah.
loyal to the organization,
Yes.
rightfully. They feel this is an organization that cares.
Yeah.
And one way to measure that is through engagement pulse, right? So whether that's surveys or how you do it. So if
Yeah.
organizations have existing surveys that they do, I'm not talking about the annual surveys, I'm talking about more the ones that you can do on demand.
Yeah.
So if organizations have existing solutions that allow
Yes.
them to do that, or they can also use the survey features, the pulse features within Workware, we track this.
Yeah.
Because if the internal talent marketplace is having an impact,
Yeah.
you should see an improvement in the
Definitely.
positive view of the employees. Right?
Yeah.
So that's another way we can kind of track that.
Yeah, and that's I think very important for any software, any new software
Yeah.
implementation, that you definitely there are these outcomes that you're looking for, but the progress on the journey to achieve those outcomes should also be recorded. Alright, so now zooming out into the whole future of HR tech landscape, right? I was reading this survey by IT Craft, which is an American organization that does lots of interesting studies about technology landscape as such, and they did a recent study on HR tech global market.
Right.
It says that the HR tech global market is set to grow from 40.45 billion, which is currently the state in 2024, to 81.84 billion by 2032, at a CAGR of 9.2%. It had a very nice graph
Wow.
that was going up.
Right.
And this influx of investment highlights the HR technology's transformative potential. Of course, with lots of point solutions and amazing sort of tools that we are using now as employees. Within 2024 itself, AI, so there are, of course, various categories of these products, which is the three pillars are AI-driven recruitment, there is hyper-personalization, and people analytics. So Workware is coming in the hyper-personalization space. And within 2024, 88% of the HR teams would have adopted AI in some way or the other. They would be using AI tools. About 45% of the employee workforce will be working remotely, either hybrid or fully. So of course the organizations do need to get ready to adopt more and more HR softwares. What is your view on where this is going in the next 4 to 5 years or longer term?
Yeah, absolutely. I think starting point, like you rightly mentioned, is Gen AI. There's a lot of work happening in that space. We'll probably see the results of that in the next few years.
Yeah.
I think this is relevant for everybody, even for us, even though we are a young company. As the capabilities of Gen AI keep evolving, improving, we need to constantly figure out how are we going to bring the power of that through our solution. So we'll continue to do that. We'll probably have young companies coming up that will disrupt not the big old companies, but younger companies like Workware, so we need to be worried about that as well. So that's going to be a very important space. Apart from that, there are going to be some trends that we think will continue in the HR space. A couple of them I can share. One of them is enterprise solutions historically have not been the most user-friendly.
True.
They've not been fun to use, etc. And that was okay, but now as we have people using a lot of external solutions.
Mm-hmm.
We use a lot of software, we use social media platforms.
Yes.
All the time we have younger generation
Mm-hmm.
workers who are digitally native.
Yes.
So the expectations of enterprise software
Mm-hmm.
will continue to change.
True.
And we would expect that enterprise software solutions will become more and more social
Mm-hmm.
in nature in how they appear. That's
Yeah.
one thing we expect. And given the current state, I think there's a long way to go,
True.
right, to achieve it. So that's probably an area we'll see a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Another area of work that we will see, we think, is consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you think about it in organizations today,
Yeah.
the way enterprise software and solutions are built
Yeah.
are based on the function within the company
True.
that owns it,
True.
right? But if you
Yeah.
look at it from an average employee's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
their experience is very broken
Yeah.
through these different systems. So I'll use a particular system for project management
True.
because
Yeah.
the department that is responsible for project management
Yeah.
selects a solution. But the feedback that I
Mhm.
need to provide to the project team
Yeah.
is on a HR system.
True.
So my experience as an
Yeah.
employee is broken with these different
Yeah.
software systems. So we expect that this sort of connectivity layer,
Mm-hmm.
right, either that's in the form of singular platforms that
Yeah.
provide all these capabilities, or platforms that do a good job in connecting these capabilities,
True.
will continue to become important and evolve.
Yeah.
And perhaps lastly, in the space we are in about hyper-personalization,
Mm-hmm.
employees feeling that the system talks to them and it's relevant to their use is
Yeah.
going to be more and more important. We're going to see more investments. That's just our read of some of the changes. that's
Definitely,
coming up.
we are hearing Gen Z is coming into the workforce,
Absolutely.
and for them, anything beyond the smartphone is very, is very difficult to already
Yeah.
engage with. So you need those solutions which they can have at the fingertip. I remember about a decade ago, or not even a decade, about 8-10 years ago, working with a similar HR tech platform who were getting into this space, not in talent marketplace, they were more of an engagement platform. For them, one of the biggest challenges was to get people to use the mobile app. But now it's the other way.
Indeed.
So many platforms don't have a mobile app yet.
And that's a limitation.
Yeah, that's a limitation because people are ready to engage on a mobile app. They don't necessarily want to go to the laptop to engage with the platform, which is definitely something which is a shift in the
Right.
landscape as well. In terms of, with your experience now and you've been interacting with so many HR leaders, what advice would you give them if they are those HR leaders who are hesitant to adopt new technologies, who are not sure whether this is going to be a right investment or not, right? How have you overcome that inhibition, or what advice would you like to give to these HR leaders?
Right. I would say to some extent start with you can trust your people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I think what we are doing here is really to empower employees to
Yeah.
find the opportunities within the organization
Yeah.
and solutions that provide HR with the ability to
Mhm.
set the rules of engagement,
Yeah.
if you will, like internal talent marketplaces do,
Yeah.
and at the same time arm HR with the insights,
Mhm.
real-time insights, sort of help you to understand how things are happening on the
Yeah.
platform. But to some extent, trusting employees that they can help themselves is something you should do, because we have very good living examples of that. LinkedIn is a great example of that. It's an external network,
Yeah.
but people are helping each other on
True.
that network. So I think it's something that will work,
Yeah.
and it's a way to unlock the power that exists within. So
Yeah.
that's number one. Number two, change is
Mhm.
inevitable.
Yeah.
You mentioned the new generation who are coming in with their expectations.
Yeah.
You mentioned about Gen AI and the
Mhm.
evolving technologies. So change is inevitable.
Yeah.
But embarking on a platform
Mhm.
that sort of enables you to navigate that change is
Yeah.
helpful,
Yeah.
right? Essentially what you're doing with certain solutions like internal talent marketplace are empowering people who are
Yeah.
seeing that change to
Yes.
react to that change.
True.
Right? So I think it's as with any new solution,
Yeah.
there are going to be challenges, rightfully,
Yeah.
and hopefully the partner you work with
Yeah.
can guide you on that journey.
True.
And because again, at the end of the day, for a solution like Workware,
Mm-hmm.
there is value only if the company continues to find value and use it in the long term.
True.
So we have our own vested interest to be
Yeah.
your strong partner to make sure it works well in your context.
Yeah.
So
And it aligns with the whole philosophy of being ready when
Yeah.
the change is coming your way. There is a very famous meme from COVID times, if you would remember, where there is a wrecking ball coming towards
Yeah,
a bunch of people who are trying to say digital transformation meeting going on, and there's a COVID-19 wrecking ball that comes that you have no choice but just to do it right now. You've been harping over it over the years, but you have to get it done now.
Absolutely.
So we don't want to reach that situation every time in every curve of change that's coming, or a wave of change that's coming towards us. But it's in the best interest of enterprises to already start thinking about these new age concepts and getting ready for them.
And fascinating that you mentioned that, right? Because it's also an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Those organizations that had already embarked on those kind of digital transformation capabilities when it was
Yeah.
not a must-have,
True.
thrived during the pandemic as well
Yes.
with minimal disruption.
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity as well.
Yes.
You have new solutions.
Yeah.
It's a choice that leaders can make
Yes.
by embracing them
Yeah.
and then probably getting ahead of the market,
True.
right? As opposed to
True.
adopting them when it's a commonplace.
Are there any success stories or case studies that you would like to share in the end,
Sure.
with our viewers, where the product or your efforts have really created a massive impact for your customers?
Sure. So here we see some themes. So for example, we are working with companies in the professional services organization. As we've seen in these organizations, you tend to have a relatively young workforce.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people who work at customer sites or customer engagements all the time. A lot of them work remotely,
Yeah.
etc. So their ability to feel connected with their employer,
Yeah.
the consulting firm, is challenged by just the nature of the business. So what we do is when we go and we create a vibrant virtual online community
Yeah.
for the employees to connect with one another so they know what's happening in the rest of the organization.
Yes.
And it's amazing, we've had instances where the employees had never been to their office,
Oh wow.
right? They were
Yeah,
hired
that's
during the
awesome.
pandemic,
Yeah.
they continue to work with the customer, they've never gone to the office even once.
Wow.
So they've not met their colleagues.
Mhm.
And when we created these profiles
Yeah.
with nice digital
Yes.
photo that people put up,
Yeah.
some of these colleagues are happy to
Yeah.
see and get to know more about their
Yeah.
colleagues. So that's one. But it goes beyond,
Mhm.
right? Because then there's a way they feel connected to the home organization, to their
Mhm.
people, to ask them for queries, for
Yeah.
mentors, and also sometimes look for opportunities. Because you're working on a particular customer engagement,
Yes.
you know perhaps this will get done by mid of next year,
Mhm.
and you're thinking what else. And so rather than waiting for that time and then looking, this way you know what's on the horizon and you can already start to develop. So that's an example of
Yeah.
customer we are working with. We also are working with companies that are in the financial services industry
Mhm.
where they have multiple business lines. So you have a group, but then you have companies with employees and they operate as independent companies. But as a group,
Yeah.
that's a great synergy and opportunity lost,
Mhm.
right? So if someone's leaving one company in the group,
Yeah.
instead of losing them from the group, how
Yeah.
about finding an opportunity for them with another company in the same
True.
group? And so we are helping them to have a kind of a marketplace across the entire group,
Oh,
so that
that's
we
very
create
powerful.
visibility
Yeah.
across different companies. The
True.
group.
And there are so many conglomerates that can
Indeed.
benefit from something like this across the
Absolutely.
world, and of course in our region itself that I can think of that can benefit from this concept and really enable the talent as well as they
Yeah.
go along, right? Thank you so much for sharing about your journey. As I would like, I want to close off with another sort of saying, and this time it is from Anne LeBlanc, who's the senior principal at Mercer. Mercer, of course, is the top tier firm that does a lot of study and
Indeed.
executes a lot of work in the talent marketplace as well, right? And she says that not only does talent marketplace unlock the hidden skills and capacity in an organization, but it also helps you understand where there are concentrations of skills and where the skills are lacking.
Very true.
When it is done right, and supported with change management and coaching, the internal talent marketplace can deliver a broad range of benefits for talent acquisition, talent development, engagement, and retention, just to name a few. And it's not just a technology, it is actually a cultural revolution that's happening in the times that we are living in, and we all must embrace it. And that's my message to the founders, to the leaders, and to all the CEOs of the world, that talent marketplace and new age concepts in the talent world are there to be embraced at the right time.
Absolutely agree. Thank you for that.
All right.
And thank you for having me on the podcast.
It has been a
It's my
pleasure. Thank you to all the listeners for listening in. And if you have questions about workplace, please feel free to reach out to Thyag. And if you have questions about how to implement and and how to work with your leaders and implement talent best practices, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.